Well, joining us now is the former White House communications director for Donald Trump. Michael Dubke was in the White House from March to June of 2017. He knows the GOP, the Republican Party, really well. He's also founder of BlackRock, the public policy and strategic comms firm. And Michael, great to have you on the News Agents USA. I'm guessing that you were riveted by the confirmation hearing yesterday of Pete Hegseth for Defense Secretary. Did you feel encouraged by what you heard?
Well, I think riveted is a strong word. I was watching for a couple of tells, and it was whether or not the Democrats were going to move as a unified body in opposition, and that proved to be true. They absolutely showed that they had organized their line of questioning. They were very succinct in their attacks, and so that was one thing. Generally, these nomination hearings aren't as straightforward as that. You generally have a few members of the other party that are supportive of a nominee, whether they're from their home state or they have known them in a past life. But this was a very unified opposition, number one. And then the second thing I was watching for was Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa. You know, in the United States, we've got this advise and consent from the Senate. The president can appoint, but then the Senate advises and consents. And this is a U.S. senator. She's a former Army colonel. She has experience with the military, and unfortunately, she also has experience with sexual harassment in the military. And the question is whether or not she was going to be, for Hegseth. She's a Republican, or if she was going to be a holdout vote. And if she was, then we'd have a kind of breakdown of the system. But her questions were very pointed. It was obvious she had had personal meetings with Hegseth and had already kind of asked him these questions about setting up a sexual harassment tribunal, etc. And when she calmly went through her questions, it was very clear that this nomination is going to be headed to a full Senate vote.
It's so interesting that you say calmly, because others listening to that would say zombie, that she's basically been bought. She was, as you say, a victim of sexual assault herself. Hegseth has been facing these historical allegations of sexual assault. She declined, we understand, to meet with the victims involved in those allegations. I guess some would say, what is the point of a Senate hearing if they're all so scared of the incoming president that they just fall into line?
Well, first, I believe it was one of the accusers that she decided she did not need to meet with. And that was mainly because, again, as I understand it, the police had investigated the accusation and decided not to press charges against Hegseth. And this was from several years ago,
You
first of
could
all.
still meet the
Second of
victim,
all,
couldn't you? You could still
well,
meet them.
you could. But second of all, and I think more importantly to the tenor of your question, I mean, as I said earlier, she was a colonel in the United States military. I do not think she is a shrinking violet, nor wilts to pressure. I know there had been a couple months ago when Hegseth was named, there was all this strum and drang about the alt-right conservatives are going to come after anybody that votes against Trump's nominees, and they spent a ridiculously small sum of money in Iowa, saying, Joni, do the right thing.
Mm.
I know the senator well enough to know that that is not a form of intimidation. She must have gotten the answers that she wanted in her private meetings with Hegseth to allow her to have the type of hearing yesterday that she had. And later in the day, she said she's going to vote for his nomination.
Mike, do you really believe if this wasn't an anonymous process that you would get Republicans signing up to vote into power in this extraordinarily powerful, huge job? A man who's facing allegations of sexual assault, allegations of excessive drinking, comments about women in combat, and who frankly doesn't have any experience of running something anywhere near this big or this important.
Well, we've had a couple of nominees for Secretary of Defense who would have fit the category that you're talking about, had years of experience, understand the intricacies of the military and all of this. And they've, frankly, from an outsider's perspective, They've created a U.S. military that's less lethal and have created a procurement process that isn't in tune with the 21st century. I mean, some of the big challenges that we've got that we're seeing in Ukraine are basically a warfare that is on a different stage than we fought over the last 50, 60
So
years of the
just
Cold
talk me
War.
through that. Why
Yeah.
would Pete Hegseth be more lethal? I mean, do you think this is related to his comments about having women in
No, I think it's
combat? I mean, what makes a Fox News
well,
presenter or a
two
Fox
things.
presenter more lethal?
Well, what makes him more lethal is what he did before Fox. He is a military veteran himself. He has received several awards. I guess where I would go on the on whether or not he would be better for the DoD, the Department of Defense, than a more traditional pick is this. We've been there, done that. In the United States, I think we can all agree that this, and frankly, across the world, I think we can agree that what the United States experienced in November of 2024 was a disruption election. And Donald Trump has nominated disruptors to be secretaries of multiple agencies, not just the DoD, but including Interior and Energy and other
I
places.
don't recall.
So my
I don't
point,
recall, Mike, any Americans saying our military is just rubbish. Our military is second rate. Do you
oh,
really think that the people that were voting for Trump didn't like the way the US military
yes.
worked?
Yeah,
Really?
there was a during the campaign, there was a lot of discussion, not just on the presidential level, but for Senate races and House races that happened concurrently during our presidential election in even years. There was a lot of conversation about the quote unquote wokeness of the
What
military.
does that
The
even mean? It
low
means that you had
That means the lower, well,
it
let
means that
me
you had what you had gay people or you had transgender people or
no,
you had non-white people or you had women. I mean, that's what it sounds like
not
to us.
necessarily. No, what it means is that you're lowering the requirements for individuals to acquire certain ranks and certain divisions of the military. So what that does mean, and what we saw in the hearing yesterday, was there was a talk of equality, and by equality, what they were talking about is if there's an individual, there's set standards, and if there's an individual, male, female, whatever,
Yeah.
that meet those standards, then they have the opportunity to advance in that
But
particular
Mike,
line.
I guess the question I'm asking is whether you can
Yeah.
see the irony that you are appointing somebody who seems to have no reason to be there. And I guess from the outside world, and obviously it's really helpful to hear this from the American perspective, we're just looking at this thinking, is that the best you've got? You've got a weekend TV presenter. I have nothing against weekend TV presenters. You know, I've
I
been
mean,
there
come
myself.
on.
But is
The
that the
little I
best you can
know of
do?
this.
You know, you can disrupt or you can not follow traditional, but you couldn't find anyone else in the whole of America without sexual assault allegations, excessive drinking allegations. This was
I
the
guess
only guy that's left.
I guess I'm approaching this question from a different perspective, which is we are is this the best person one could find? I don't know.
Yeah.
Is this a different way of looking and organizing from the top down? And don't forget, I mean, the Secretary of Defense is one person, but he also has a plethora of individuals underneath him, some appointed by the civilian authorities, by the White House, others that have come up through the ranks of the military that are operationalizing and
Yeah, what do you think they're thinking
mobilizing
then?
the military.
And they're wondering why this guy's their boss?
Oh, I don't think that they will, especially given the fact that he is former military and has served in a combat role. Look, this may not work. It may not, and I'm going to concede your point. They could have found somebody who was, you know, right down the lane, was a ideal candidate from what we've had in the past. And I think part of the message that was sent was twofold here. One of which is disruption, which I've talked about. The other of which is, this is also Donald Trump 2.0. It's the second version of Donald Trump. He learned a lot in the first administration that he ran. And I think he's also pressing to see how much disruption this city, Washington, D.C., this country, the United States, and frankly, the world is going to be able to accept as we go forward. And it's outside the norm, but Donald Trump is outside the norm. So I actually question why we think that he would be nominating, the same old, given the fact that that's not how he ran for the White House.
The Newsagents USA.